6:35.
All right, everybody. But I'm getting coffee with Emma. Okay. I'm going to call the Moab City Council regular meeting to order on July 9th at 6:03 PM. And Sarah, would you lead us in the pledge?
I would be happy to.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're more than welcome.
All right. This is the public comment section of our agenda. Do we have anybody here that's going to speak? And we do. And that would be Sarah.
I'm not only here, I have the prompts.
No.
Great. Thank you.
And I will be as quick as possible.
3 minutes.
I know, but I'll try to be faster. A couple years ago, I tried to get a boots on the ground recycling specialist pilot project going for a year with the county, the city, and solid waste authority, all kicking in, but it didn't quite work out. I've been doing it the best I can on my own. And currently I have 22 different sites or bins that I process in the city, and I have about another 10 or 15 in other areas. And I haul stuff to the recycle center every day. And it gets recycled, best practices recycling there. So these items can be recycled forever. They never break down. They can be used over and over. 140 million of these are thrown out every day in the USA. And I carry $100 bill in my pocket. When I'm out at Lions Park, where I have 8 bins, I ask people, I say, I'll give you $100 if you can tell me how many of these are wasted. And people just have no clue. One day someone will know. These, we throw out enough glass every 3 weeks to fill 2 Empire State Buildings. This can be used over and over again. So basically what I care about is all of this is exploited and comes from the earth. And we're sort of deteriorating what's left of the planet. By giving it back, we're saving tons of energy, 95% using already existing aluminum versus virgin, like 74% on the other thing. So it's a 6.2 mile round trip to Lions Park. I go 365 days a year because anyone who's dealt with public recycling knows it's you never know what you're going to find there. So maybe in the dead of winter, I go every other day, but I've hauled like in 2 or 3 days over 1,500 aluminum cans. I talk to the public. They're always like so happy to see recycling. I explain where it's going. I see people that said, oh, I saw you here 2 years ago. And I said, yeah, I'm going to keep being here until I drop over. But, you know, on your own site, you have something written that recycling, why it matters. It saves water, lowers air pollution, creates jobs, preserves natural areas, promotes personal responsibility. Over the years, I've noticed the Canadians are aces at recycling. And I've asked them at times, because I've been up at the center and they read the signs, they put the right thing in the right place. They've read my signs in my bins at Lions Park, because you have to fend off the public citizens using your bins. And so I've had to look at mail inside bins that are from Castle Valley residents. I have to call them and say, I can't handle the public recycling and your home recycling. So there's a lot of tricks, but the Canadians learned from preschool the importance of recycling all the way through university. And so they really get it. And I always tell them, well, here we teach people how to waste. And that's true. It's sad, but true, but the truth will set you free. So hopefully we'll get to the point where we will have a boots on the ground person. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Got to get ready to go to Lions Park.
Thanks for the show and tell too. That's
Yeah.
very impactful.
And next time I'll tell you about this.
Okay. So
David knows all about it.
That's true.
Thank you. I was going to say the acting chief, I pick up recycling from him. We have a great system. I'm like, do you have stuff yet? Yeah. I meet him in the back, it's backyard deal. And he gives me all his stuff. And it works perfectly.
great. Thanks, James. All right. See
Sorry
ya.
to go over
See
for
ya.
2 seconds.
That's okay. No problem. Any other public comments? All right, moving on to department head updates, which is the majority of our meeting this evening. We'll start with Lex with the police department update. He's going to share with you some statistics on the good work that Moab Police Department has been doing.
Mayor, City Council. Yeah, I wanted to share some statistics we've now been utilizing Spillman as a record management system for a little over a calendar year, more or less the last fiscal year. So I thought it'd be interesting to see what statistics look like in some certain categories. And I've kind of lumped some things together and I'll show you how we did that. But one statistic that isn't on here is, and you probably read, we solved a 51-year-old cold case homicide in the last couple of weeks, which is a giant accomplishment for us and super proud of our people. And it was really a big deal for us and for that family. So we're really excited about that. To jump forward. So what I did is tried to break down total incidents, then person crime, domestic violence, and obviously there's more detail to these. That's what the asterisk means. But in the last fiscal year, we responded to 12,690 incidents, which is a lot higher than in past years. However, it's hard to 100% trust those numbers because that system was just insufficient as far as a records management system. We get questions a lot about, are we doing traffic enforcement and where we're doing it and how much of it. We made 4,733 traffic stops and issued over 2,500 citations, 36 DUIs, 173 traffic accidents. That's all of them lumped together. Persons crimes, which are not domestic violence related assaults, etc. There were 155. I throw those up there just to see that we don't have a giant a violent crime issue here, but we do have a big domestic violence issue here. And that's something that we are working on diligently. We have great community partners and we are doing a good job of, as much as we can to find solutions outside of just law enforcement. And we're doing a good job with that, but bring your attention to the fact that there are 93 domestic violence incidents and 155 other that were of any kind of violence. Property crimes, 212. And then some of the public offense types, these are just, of interest, disorderly conduct, controlled substances. Illegal campers, 133. Now that could be that we just put a warning sticker on their car and said, you can't camp overnight in the city, which we do a lot of education in that. Suspicious circumstances, you can see some of these. Welfare checks often are, I haven't seen so-and-so for a little while. So those are some of those. We were really busy, obviously, and a lot of that 4,733 traffic stops are on Main Street on one end or another of town. Folks, kind of curious of why they don't see us stop cars right in the middle of downtown. And fact is, we do see a lot of the violations there, but we wait till we're outside of downtown to pull the car over, and we decide where to pull them over, where it's the safest for us, for the citizens and everyone else. So you'll often see that the violation occurred down there, but we wait till we're not going to cause more of a traffic hazard to stop the car. So some of our statistics from the code enforcement and code compliance side, there were 394 code compliance cases entered and investigated this last year. On the code enforcement side, there were 342 violations observed. They contacted 176 people to talk with them about their issues. 1,074 parking problems. That's pretty big. Traffic, obviously, from the past slide in this are, we spend a lot of time on those. And then VIN inspections, 435. That would be your off-road vehicles, personal vehicles that are purchased out of state. Anything that came here from another state has to be inspected by law enforcement before it can be registered. Animal control, just some basic statistics. Animal bites, 29. Animal problems, 429. Animal abuse, 15. I hate seeing that at all. Dead animals, and these are mostly hit by a car, 42. Animal trap, that would be us course, usually working in the Walnut Lane area, getting the cats relocated, which we've had tremendous success with. Aggressive animals, livestock issues, and some DWR calls that we assist. And that's it. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, but any questions on any of the others? I know this first page has a lot of numbers, but
Questions for the chief?
Lex, so under the code enforcement, why is there such a large discrepancy between what's the observed and the contacted?
those are different. So contact would be that they've stopped and said, hey, your car is parked strangely, or just something that's not a violation and not investigated. It's just them stepping out and talking with someone about
Okay,
an issue to try to head it off before it's an issue.
okay.
So we try to be proactive when we can be proactive rather than go to the violation part.
Okay, so those two are very separate.
Do you have any stats or any way to follow up on especially those domestic violence issues?
Um,
Does the issue resolve? Does somebody get help?
Yes, well, and we can do another follow-up another time, but our domestic violence expert, Detective Sterry, put together a lot of great information of how we're responding to these calls, what's continuing to happen, what we need to fix, what we're doing well. I mean, we are one of the leading agencies in the state now with the lethality assessment protocol. In fact, people use our model to build those. It's now statewide via UCGIS, but he did kind of break down a lot of the different situations that we deal with here. They're a little bit unique, and one of them, of course, is housing is a huge challenge here. When when there's an issue and they get out of jail or whatever it might be, not a lot of options for them to go somewhere else, and that's why we see a little bit higher recidivism here. Is they let them back in, there's nowhere else to go.
Kind of slightly in that vein, is there any way, or I don't know if you guys track this, like referrals to community partners? Just because I know due to the unique kind of geographic location of Moab, we encounter some issues that a lot of agencies might not, and have to kind of work within the community to try to provide solutions. And I think just kind of getting an objective view of the way that some of these like cooperative relationships are looking would be great.
Yeah, I could absolutely even, address that another time in more detail, but we do a warm handoff anytime there's a domestic violence incident where somebody's arrested with one of our community partners. It's a in-person handoff. They're on the phone with our victim advocate, but every single time that we respond on one of these, there's some type of warm handoff to one of our community partners.
Thank you.
So this is great. I'm just curious, there's a lot of numbers to do comparisons, but I'm just curious, if you could tell us a little bit about how these numbers compare to the previous fiscal year.
Yeah, the last stats that we were able to pull, and it wasn't the fiscal year, but it was the calendar year of 2023. We had 8,000 incidents, and we had conducted, I want to say, around 2,500 traffic stops. So some of the numbers, every number up here is a little bit higher. There's multiple reasons for that. One's we have more officers on the street now than we did in 2023. So there's going to be more traffic stops and more citations issued in that regard. I think it's gotten a little bit busier now that we're into the summer, where before it was winter stats, and we've collected a few more. And the collection of statistics is way more accurate since last June when we started Spillman. Before that, we had Fat Pot, and it just was not, it was an insufficient system. Now our stats are a lot more accurate. I do also know that numbers are up in all regards, but the stats before that were just not quite as trustworthy.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you on noise. That's kind of been an ongoing issue, throughout the years, and there's a public perception that that people aren't, there's like been no citations like written on noise, or I was just wondering, is there truth to that or, or,
Well, it's,
you know? I know it's hard to.
yeah, I would have to look into each citation through the court system or see how we could break it down. So the citations that are up here are not necessarily just a traffic ticket. Those are all citations written. Some of them are traffic citations for modified mufflers.
Okay, that's what.
We do actual, we do enforcement specifically targeting modified vehicles and noise and so I'm sure a percentage of those citations are directly related to that. And on the right, you see noise problem. There's 84 noise problem. That could vary though from a house party to they're just all lumped together to a loud car or whatever it might be that. So that number, the noise problem calls aren't necessarily a loud vehicle, could be a loud stereo.
Right. One thing I think would be great to see is, I know like the sheriff's department has been monthly putting their thing in. And it'd be awesome, if, like the city, we just had like maybe even a yearly one, so that people, cause I think people kind of buy into it. And I know that like, I'll talk to people and, or probably at work or something, like, oh, look at, they did this month, and stuff. And I don't know, I know that people like to read that stuff, so I don't know if it would be benefit to do like a little yearly posting of exactly what this is.
Yeah, we could definitely, I talk with the mayor and Lisa and David, and we can decide if we want to do that. I mean, monthly's doable, yearly's doable, whatever, if we decide we want to do that. I've seen what they do. Our stats are a little different than them because of the geographic area and they're focused on I-70 and interdiction and we're in the city, but yeah. Doable though.
We'll talk. Any other questions for the chief?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, now that we have Spillman, I think we will have accurate comparisons going forward. So, thanks, chief, for sharing that with us. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I don't think Levi is going to be able to join us today. So, we'll just have Michael and his team report on the flood update. We're gonna talk about, give you guys an update on where we are with the rump process. Project updates, Cane Creek and dispersed parking. And then we have some conversation about what we're gonna do in the future for this flood situation that may
Great.
be a new normal for us. So Michael, do you want to come up or do you want Mark to come up first?
Mark will do it first. He's gonna do the run first.
Okay.
I apologize. I'm having some PowerPoint issues here. Oh, here we go. Wait. Oh, no. Sorry, I'm having some technical issues. Okay, well, short of giving you the full rundown that I wanted to give you. Yeah,
got time.
actually don't.
Well,
Turns out I don't have
14 minutes.
PowerPoint on here, actually. That was my
we're gonna
problem.
open it.
Oh, it just got. Maybe it'll let me do it this time. Nope. Okay. I'm gonna open it just in my browser.
You know when you do that. Let's see. It's not connected.
Huh. Oh, yeah.
God. Looks sad.
Okay,
Send it to me and I'll share it.
okay.
You're saying you're not connected, so go to the Wi-Fi.
Just do a whole photo.
Either one. We'll let you into the drives.
All right. Maybe now, okay, now it's at least on the line. Okay, here we go. Sent. Okay, here we go. I've got I just sent myself a PDF of it, but I was having trouble getting on the wireless, so, okay, so, yeah. Oh, where's my? No. It disconnected me from the Zoom meeting. I think it kicked me out, yeah. Okay. All right, here we go.
See, Mark, you were our tech whiz. We
I
had
am-
you come and do all the tech stuff for Chuck because he could never do it.
And here I
The
am
curse, right?
in the, yeah, there's a curse that comes with it, I think. Okay, there we go. Let's stop. Okay, it looks like it's good to go there. There we go. All right. Screen. Screens. Okay.
All right.
All right. Now I think we're off and running. That. Why is it not letting me? Oops. Computer's really not working here. There it is. All right, it's there we go. All right, I apologize for the delay there. Okay, so this presentation, some of you may have seen before. This is kind of just a brief synopsis of what the Water Utility Resource Management Plan is, or WURMP, if anybody cares to use that acronym. It's a little unwieldy. And the engineering department has delivered this presentation in one form or another before, so this may be a bit repetitive, but I think it's good to kind of check in and just remind everybody of what it is. Okay, what the plan is and will do. It is a cooperative effort between the public water providers in the valley, that is us, GWISA, and the San Juan Special Services District. And the intended goal is to ensure resilient management of water resources for residents and visitors. And the study period is 100 years, so it looks pretty far into the future. And what resilient management of water resources means there is not the aquifer. We're not doing an aquifer study here. It's more just the water that we may potentially have available to us. How do we use that? How do we distribute it? How do we get it to the residents and visitors of the valley? And it considers surface water and groundwater. So that does include the aquifer. Studies have been done on. That's the Glen Canyon aquifer, typically is what we consider to be the culinary water source. As well as, surface water sources. This was done by our consultant Hansen, Allen, and Luce, or HAL for short. They do a lot of our water sorts of studies and designs. It does go through and summarize the water sources and system production capacities. Again, it doesn't try to evaluate the aquifers, it just refers to the other studies that have been done. It looks at the types and quantities of water needed, mainly irrigation and culinary water. And so there are various different schemes for how to break those two out. Considers the possible effects of drought and climate change to some extent, though it generally mentions those things and it considers those things, but for the most part, it's meant to be a sort of starting document. And we have to kind of check back in as we go along to see how those things are really affecting our water supply. It does go into conservation and it evaluates alternatives of sharing water resources, with the idea being that we do have 3 water providers in the valley and that it's in our best interest to cooperate. And it identifies potential solutions to meet existing and future water supply. Again, that's groundwater development. That might be additional wells, not even necessarily in the existing aquifer that we're using now. Cooperative use between agencies, aquifer storage and recovery. That can look like something like an injection well or using like a basin to recover surface water. Conservation, of course, treatment of water from the Colorado River. A lot of places do this. Back when I'm from near New Orleans, that's actually what we did. We used water out of the Mississippi River. Wastewater treatment reuse. This would of course be for irrigation, not for drinking. and secondary agricultural water use optimization. So this may be something like, again, this is provisional, but purchasing water rights and reusing existing agricultural water rights as they become available, if they become available. It reviews the water rights that we do have amongst all the different agencies and provides recommendations on water right planning. It does have a conceptual design of those alternatives. So there's maps in there that point to potential, let's say, vague sites for, let's say, a well in a different aquifer, or if we have to install an intake down at the river, roughly how much pipe we would need to bring that as far as San Juan, for example. That's kind of the level of the conceptual design there. It considers legal and regulatory implications of projects. Obviously, there's some consideration of water rights there. We may have to apply to have some of those water rights, for example, changed in terms of what their diversion is from being, let's say, a well or a spring to the river, for example. It's coordination with key stakeholders. So, you know, for example, we also brought the Moab Irrigation Company in on this. They're a big stakeholder. So though it's mainly the three water providers in the valley, we also brought other folks in because obviously they have very important things to say. We did do a good little bit of public engagement. The plan itself actually includes public comment in there saying, you know, the feedback we got is XYZ. They, you know, folks seem to like this sort of plan and they don't like this sort of plan. So that stuff was included in there. Yeah, and so there is a plan. Right now it's just a draft, but soon we'll have a final plan that we'll bring before you for review and hopeful final adoption by all of those member agencies, the three water providers. What the plan does not do is produce any additional aquifer groundwater studies, nor does it replace any that currently exist. This is an important point in that it really does not look at the aquifers at all. It just takes the existing data that we have and says, assuming that we have that water, this is what we can do moving forward. That can change. That can absolutely change if we decide that that information is any different. It will affect the projects that we choose from this plan, for example. It does not identify groundwater safe yield values. Again, this is a aquifer characteristic that it just doesn't get into, and it's the state's purview. It does not require that anybody lose their water rights. In fact, it makes really no changes to any rights whatsoever. It's merely provisional. It does not evaluate private water rights or resources. We actually don't have a terrific amount of data on that use anyway, actually. It does not produce a policy document that will regulate water usage on specific properties. It does not produce a detailed capital improvement plan. That's for going forward. We can choose these projects. We can not choose them. It does not advocate for or against growth in the valley, though it does assume a certain growth in the valley, just to be conservative. But it does that on a I would say, a fairly simple level. It's different for each agency, but for the city of Moab, for example, over the next 100 years, it just assumes a steady 1.02% growth rate. And now, obviously, that's not going to be exactly that, but it had to assume something, and so that's what we did. And it definitely does not supersede city or county legislative land use authority. This is really just the document will be a resource for us to use in the future. We can point to it. We can say, hey, that's a great project, or no, we don't like it. So after all that, I hope I didn't run long. If you have any questions.
Questions for Mark? You guys recall we had a presentation probably about a year ago. Caitlin and Colin weren't a part of our group at that time. And the important thing about this plan, I think, is that all entities support it in a form. So that's going to be the work, I think, moving forward, is working with San Juan, the San Juan Special Service District, and with GWISA and the city. So we're all in this together. And so we want to make sure that we have a final plan that we can all agree on.
Yep.
And I think my understanding was this plan will help guide you guys in policy decisions moving forward. It doesn't create them, but it will give you a resource to guide us. So any timeline, Mark?
So we've had a draft now for a few months. We've compiled some comments. We're going to get that to our consultant here shortly. Kind of just off the top of my head, I'd say we could turn around in the next couple months and have a final plan ready for you all to review and possibly approve.
That'd be great. Thanks, Mark.
Okay,
Now, are you gonna do the project update? Yes.
so go ahead and do that.
Do you guys have any questions about the rock? Okay, I wanted you guys to get an update. We haven't heard about it for a while, but it's still out there. We don't want to let it go. So I just thought it was important for us to get a quick update and a reminder that there's a plan that is very important.
Okay.
Okay, project updates.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so I'll start with a kind of just a rundown of where we are on dispersed parking in Cane Creek. And well, maybe I'll actually start by saying that this is maybe a little silver lining. So I'll start with kind of the good news is that though the floods were certainly not the best news of the year, they didn't set us too far back on our projects, thankfully. The rains didn't really affect the dispersed parking project too much. Flooded out some cuts that we had for the bulb outs, required a little bit of extra work on the contractor's part, maybe set them back a little bit of time, maybe added a day or so for them to go back in there and recompact some of that material. But for the most part, didn't affect dispersed parking. Hit Cane Creek a little bit harder, as folks may have seen. But our contractor was able to put things back together in quick order. They were out there on the weekends working on it, which was helpful. So that was a little bit of somewhat good news amidst all of the bad news. So for dispersed parking, I don't know how granular we want to get this, so I'll just kind of throw out some quick little bits. We're done with all of our concrete on the east side with some scant exceptions. They've moved over to the west side and begun on that, on the west side of Main Street. And they've done most of their excavation for those concrete areas, as you've probably seen when you drive around downtown. There's cones around all that stuff. Landscaping has been started. If you go around, you'll see some big chunks of sandstone. Those are actually, a lot of those are going to be benches in the future. They look awfully tall right now, but we're actually going to bury those down to they should stick out about 20 inches off the ground, and that'll provide a place for folks to sit. In the next couple of weeks, they'll be doing some decorative stamped concrete in that landscaping area as well. We're planning on doing the microsurfacing and crack seal starting in mid-August. That's our tentative plan right now. And that'll just put kind of a thin layer of a kind of a seal coat over that. It's a little bit different than a chip seal. We'll end up with a nice black finish out there, and then we'll put fresh striping on top of that. Right now, we're still looking to do that potentially as night work. We have talked about that, and so that's still in discussion, and that's what we're probably going to do there. Just because it is going to, we're going to have to shut off traffic for much of that for that period. So rather than cut off that traffic during the day, we figured we'd do it at night. We tentatively, have final completion in late September, with landscaping potentially running up to that and maybe even past it. We're a little bit more flexible on the landscaping only because at that point we can get out of the traffic, and if some things need to be moved around here or there, we don't have to press them so hard on it. Okay. Any questions about dispersed parking?
Mark, I know some things have changed, but what will the final landscaping look like? Will there be trees incorporated into Those are
Yep. So there's quite a lot of trees in there and some smaller plantings as well. A couple of pergolas are going to go in. Those are earlier on the schedule. We may see those in the next few weeks. Water fountains, just a couple of those, and those stone benches and some stamped concrete. Yeah.
Okay. And the trees will be part of this initial push that will be finishing up in September.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. That should all go in this year. Sometimes, if things all don't quite work out and it gets pushed till it gets too cold, but the schedule we're on right now, we should make it in by this year. Have all the landscaping in.
Did we make any cuts to the landscape? And I know there's been some discussion that we might want to consider going back to that original plan.
We did. We simplified the landscaping. I believe we removed a lot of the plantings and whatnot from some of we kind of looked at them as like the less central streets. And one of the really big items that we removed was we had, it was something kind of like flagstone that we were going to mount in the landscaping areas to look like fins. It was raised stone was the item in there. That was just a very large single item that we removed out of there. Okay. And
Questions for Mark on dispersed parking, and I just want to clarify for the public, because I know this has come up, that this project is part of the hotspot funding that we got from the Department of Transportation, the UDOT. And so this is not a city-funded project. This is a project that, am I saying this correctly?
Oh, I think the city ended up putting in a little bit of
Bit of money,
general
right.
fund.
We did.
Work, yeah, but you're right, the vast bulk of it was money that came from the legislature actually through UDOT.
Right, and I just wanted that to be.
But there was a legislative appropriation.
yeah, Richard, our
So when the GOEO was we got that money for, I think, the landscaping, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That-
So anyway, I just want to put that out there because I know that question has come up. So this is important for the community to know.
Yeah, thank you for adding that, Mayor. Okay, and I'll move on to King Creek. We are done with the installation of the sewer. So that's a whole lot of new sewer line we got down in there. We're mostly done with water, estimated at about 80%. We haven't actually connected any of the new mains quite yet, so we've got to do the tie-ins to the main and the lateral tie-ins. This will require some shutdowns along the way. As you do that, you got to turn off the old ones and connect the new ones. That's coming up. Storm drain, we're less far along. That's all coming up now. It's mostly installed along the north and east side of the road. And we don't really have any of it along the south and west side yet, but they're still working on that. So it's moving along nicely. We are planning on starting concrete early to mid-August is what we're looking at there, and they'll get to work on that. There's quite a lot of that going in. All new curb and gutter on that north and east side and on the south side as well, and sidewalk and shared use path. Landscaping for this project will probably happen beginning next spring is the way this one will work out. So we're going to run all the way up against winter, get as much of the hard improvements done as we can, which right now we're thinking we're going to get everything done. And then finish off with the plantings in the spring when it warms back up again. The floods sounds like did disturb our riprap along our stream protection there that we have kind of across the street from the movie theater. They had to do a little bit of touching up out there, but for the most part, we're mostly done with that. And then we are looking to have final paving done for the project by the winter. We are kind of running right up against that deadline of right around Thanksgiving when they close the plant. And we're talking to the contractor about having a contingency plan in place in case that does happen.
Questions about King Creek? Great. This is another project for the public's information that was paid for by a low interest loan and a large grant, 50%, almost 50% of the project from the Community Impact Board. I know that question's also come up. I thought it's important to emphasize that as well. All right. Anything else, Mark?
No, Mayor, that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, y'all.
All right, now we have Michael, and Michael, you're gonna talk to us about the importance of us keeping our eye on the ball when it comes to flooding.
Yes, and I'm gonna apologize first because I think it might be my fault that Levi's not here, just FYI. So, anyways, I know Levi's been out doing a lot of work on the streets and his crews and storm drain and everything. So there's a lot going on out there. I'm gonna update you on a different facet of what's going on since the flood, and like the mayor talked about, some planning stuff. So I heard today that the review of structural integrity by our building department of any structured buildings that were affected by the flood has been completed. And it's a very small number where there were any structural impacts from the flood. In fact, half of the impacts were more from wind, from trees falling on structures, things like that. But for the most part, the flood brought a lot of sediment, ruined some people's yards, went up against people's houses, and in some cases even went into people's houses. But according to the building department, there were very few structural impacts, actual structural impacts. So those permits, those fees that you waived, we're not going to see a lot of those, not as many as you saw 2 years ago. If there are people who are listening and know of impacts that have not been reported, please let us know. Our building official would love to come out to property and take a look and see what we can do to assist. The bank stabilization along Mill Creek has been impacted from the flood. As you've seen, I don't have any pictures today, but if you've seen right behind, just north of 3rd South, behind the vet's office, there's a portion of sidewalk that is now cantilevered. It's not supposed to be, and it's a dangerous portion of sidewalk, and we'd really like people to stay off of it. So we have blocked it off. That was a portion of bank that just was eroded out because of the floods. And also areas that we were going to be doing riprap around bridge abutments, things like that. There was more erosion that happened there. So there is some work that needs to be done to create new plans to go in there and to address what the new impacts of the flood are in those couple of big areas. That work is underway. We do have engineers working on that right now. The sidewalk, the portion of the pathway that's cantilevered, that's been eroded out, that is going to take that's going to be a long fix. It's going to be quite a bit of time. It's going to be a big fix too, because the narrowness of the creek there, it limits the number of options we have. Can't just dump a bunch of rocks in there and squeeze the creek down even more. So it's going to take a lot of engineering, maybe a concrete wall, and a lot of permits as well. So they are working on that. Mark is supervising that, and he's got them out there working, and we're looking forward to getting some updated plans back from them soon. The Mill Creek Pathway cleanup, with David's approval, we approved an emergency contract to get a contractor out that's focused specifically on the Mill Creek Pathway, and they're out there cleaning using a small skid steer and some other equipment, moving the sediment around. A lot of that sediment is going to get removed. Some of it they've kind of graded in and been able to compact a little bit, but we're trying to get it off of the paths to get the paths open, the area where it's not damaged, and to get that transportation corridor back open. And that is ongoing. I know yesterday and probably still today, they were still working in that 3rd South area, moving down towards Main Street. So the other thing I want to talk about today was some of the larger studies that we need to do. And I want to just bring it up today as a precursor for some work that we're going to need to be doing, some RFPs that need to go out, and some support that we're going to need going forward to fund these and to keep these a priority as we move forward to work on a couple of areas. I'll just mention one of the easy one first, and that's because it's just easy to explain. I think everybody understands 300 South Bridge needs to be evaluated. We need to get a structural engineering team to look at that. And what we'd like them to do actually is to create an alternatives analysis with cost estimates, so that we can look at the analysis, see what the alternatives are and what the cost estimates are. We're not talking about designing something right now and going right out to bid for it, but looking at it, see what all of the alternatives are and what the costs are, so we can start hunting for those funds to do that.
and get it on lists and all of that kind of stuff. The other area is between 100 West and 500 West. And obviously is a pretty popular area for transportation, for active transportation, but it's also a nice riparian area. A lot of people use it to walk their dogs and just take nice walks out in the nature. But there are several things that we need to do in that area in a large study. Mark and I were talking about this today. We're kind of looking at it as kind of like a master plan for that area between First and Fifth West. There's a lot of damage down there, from the flood. Some of the bridges were clogged up. There was sediment that was spread out throughout the entire floodway. The floodway is the area that you expect the creek to rise to for the base elevation, which is less than the 100-year floodplain. But there was also sediment that got up into the 100-year floodplain just from this last flood. And these floodplains are based on maps that FEMA produces. It's called the Flood Insurance Rate Map. And it shows us where all the boundaries are. So that's that area down there. We need to look at more of a long-term master plan for the area to look at four different areas. And there's probably more, but I just wanted to touch on the higher 30-foot elevation view. Recovery steps, we need to identify the necessary steps to restore the floodway. Remember, the floodway is really wide. The floodway is not just the creek. The floods, the normal base floods comes outside of the creek and fans out quite a bit down in that area. So it's a big area down there, and not all of it is public property. Mitigation measures, after we look at recovery, explore the mitigation strategies to protect the floodway and neighboring properties to the extent that we can. I'm talking about working in that floodway, addressing all of that extra material that's been deposited there over the last several years. Natural resource evaluation. This is a natural resource. This whole area is a natural resource. And we'd like to assess the area as that natural resource and plan for the restoration of the riparian corridor, which includes the pathway. Access and pathway, obviously we need to keep looking at that. It's a vital connection from First West to Fifth West. Unfortunately, right now it's inaccessible. A couple of the bridges have been taken out because of recommendations from our engineering staff based on the size of those bridges and the propensity that they have to clog up and the damage that these floods can do to the bridges, but also just the fact that they're not working potentially the way that they could work in these situations. So looking at that whole thing and evaluating the plan to access this natural area and for the continuation of the Mill Creek pathway system. So this is going to be a process. We want to get this process started right away. Mark and I are working on coming up with a scope that we can use for an RFP to get proposals from firms that would include engineers and landscape architects and potentially planning professionals as well. So we can look at all the aspects here and come up with a comprehensive plan to address this area down there. And the goal would be to let the public, hopefully get the public back down there to enjoy this natural resource and to enjoy the pathway system, the active transportation connections that it makes. You may have noticed also that on the Fifth West side, there's a lot of damage to the sidewalks. The trees, a lot of the trees in there are damaged. There are trees falling in there. Most of the trees have been girdled by sediment. And, you know, we can't get in there and dig out every single one. We've done work that we can do, but we're still going to be assessing the damage from the flood for quite a while. Some of those trees could potentially die as a result of the impact from sediment and things like that. But we are working on getting that scope together so we can get that RFP together so we can move forward and keep this up the forefront.
Questions?
I got a question for you. So as we're doing this, like when you're doing this RFP and the study and stuff, well, at some point where we need to decide like, what do we want Mill Creek to handle? You know, like, do we want Mill Creek to handle a 5,000 CFS event or a 10,000 CFS event, you know, and then kind of create the riverbed to handle that, you know, and it seems like just a massive project.
So if I could, the floodway is programmed, the floodway handles a certain flow right now. And the floodways changed a bit because the elevations have changed because of sediment deposits. But the initial goal in working with FEMA will be to get the floodway back to what it was. That's what I think we'll be trying to do. But FEMA will also be involved in guiding us and giving permits and telling us what we can and can't do within the floodway. So they'll have a lot to do with it. It won't necessarily be our decision. But we will be looking at, with our consultants, we'll be looking at all the alternatives. If things have changed since FEMA has put out these maps and there's things that they think that FEMA has not considered, we will bring those up, and we have the opportunity to propose changes to the maps, or to, and that could be through just saying the maps are wrong, or through engineering, where we do some engineering projects that actually change the maps. And there are processes for doing that, but it is a process, and FEMA does have control over these processes, and DEQ at the state level. And so we've got a lot of permitting, a lot of people to work with in order to get through this. Army Corps of Engineers as well.
And then is it a federally funded thing, or is it going to be a city funded?
Good question. I wish we knew that right now. I don't think we have an eye on the purse that's going to, we don't even know what it's going to cost, and we don't have an eye on the purse. But
I would just add unlikely to be a federal funding source. However, we have received funds in the past from state agencies for stormwater management. So I'm sure there's some creative funding sources we could identify. But, you know, we don't even really know the scope of what kind of project we're talking about here.
Right.
But, you know, multiple millions of dollars. And the other thing I'd say, we just want to make sure we're cognizant of is anything that happens upstream affects things downstream, right? And so it's a really, you know, it's definitely one of those pulling the thread and it tugs at the whole spider web type of effect. So we just have to be super cognizant of that in this area. And particularly given how close it is to the Colorado River, you know, dredging, that kind of thing can be really problematic because you don't want to be below the river level.
Well, right. My concern is that we're worried about, and we're kind of, our focus is on Mill Creek and maybe Pat Creek to some extent. But, you know, in this last storm, we had Hunt Ridge, you know, we had the whole, that whole side of that thing just flashed, and people, you know, people's yards were running, you know, so it's like up above, you know, Pipe Green, you know, stuff like that all came down. And so it's like, we got the creeks to worry about. We got all these washes all around the valley, you know, basically surrounded, you know, everything, you know, down on the north end, you know, the highway that also has to be dealt with while we're still trying to figure this out. It's a massive undertaking.
But I think it's worth also, you know, noting how in some ways it was really effective, all of that storm drainage infrastructure that had been put up there as part of the development of the Dock Allen subdivision, right? That I don't know that it's ever seen that kind of flow before. And while it didn't, you know, we had that runoff on the north or the south end of Dock Allen, you know, it didn't overtop the banks and come into the main part of the neighborhood at all, which is great to see.
Came close. It was
thought about it.
Thought about it. But, you know, the other thing with doing these studies, and this doesn't address the storm drain system with what you're talking about, where it fell in the north and then inundated the streets. And that's something we're still talking with Levi about, and we will have to be doing some studies on that as well. But when these studies are done and we have alternatives analyzed, and we look at some of the things that we have in plans right now and some of the things we could do, then we can really look at the funding sources that are available. We actually have one project that we have through NRCS potentially funded that is down in this area right now, and that's the Gabion baskets. But, you know, it's something, I think that project, and Mark and I talked about this today, we should be wrapping, you know, we've got something going on right there, but we should also be looking at, has anything changed, just like we are with the RIPRAC projects, and seeing if we want to do anything different. Is that still what we want to do down here? Or is there something else that we could do? Or is that the beginning of something that we build onto? So there's lots of evaluation to do. We're not going to stop with any of the projects that are currently being designed as response to the last flood 2 years ago. But we do hope that those will be able to be rolled into any evaluations that we're doing. It'd be a comprehensive evaluation.
I guess piggybacking on Jason's question, I'm wondering if you're also talking with, like, if this is gonna be a Moab City specific one, or if we're engaging Grand County and Cora, if we're talking to rim, what's the scope even of the plan and who are the partners?
So with these two events, the things that we identify and, the impacts that we're identifying, we are passing those along to Cora because this is a big emergency that includes the county and the city. We're working together on this. There will be opportunities for funding for recovery and things like that, but the long-term planning most likely is going to be city projects. And the long-term funding, like David said, it's highly unlikely that federal funds are going to be available and they're going to be waiting for us to finish our project just to give us money. But that doesn't mean we won't go after those and we won't be looking for all kinds of funding. We just have to get these plans approved first. But we will work with the county and make sure that we're combining our resources. We're all affected by this. It's all the county. But yeah, we will be working with everyone.
Thanks.
Luke, did you-
Michael, I just want to say thank you from the active transportation community. This is so different from 2 years ago where we lost access under Main Street, our one safe access under Main Street for 8 months. And then it opened very briefly and then we lost it again for a construction project.
Yeah.
And I've been checking on the Bay Brothers work every day and they're halfway through the underpass under Main Street.
Oh, they are good.
And just amazing work and really have opened things up. And it's a couple of weeks and it's as opposed to 8 months last year.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Well, that was a joint thing. I approached David with it. Levi agreed as well. Everybody thought it'd be a good idea because the public works crew really needs to focus on the streets and making sure
Absolutely.
the streets are open, storm drains are working, all that kind of stuff. So in order to get this done, we did have to do that contract. So
It's great. Thank you.
Just a quick clarifying question. Even if we weren't working with FEMA, like we can't just go in and like dredge up the creek. Cause I've had a lot of constituents come and just be like, why can't the city just come out and just like take all of the stuff that got deposited? Like whenever we're dealing with water systems, we have to go through a lot of permitting.
we do. The flood insurance system is a big system and it's federally mandated system and we have somebody on staff usually who looks over that, but we don't necessarily get to make these decisions based on what we think is best. We have to go by what the standards are from FEMA and go through their processes to change because there's a minimum amount of change that you can make that's acceptable. And once you go beyond that, you could be you could be fixing something for right here, but as David said, it affects people downstream. It fixes it for these people, but it just made it so that property that never flooded before ever and is not in the 100-year floodplain just became in the 100-year floodplain. So it's really important that we do follow their processes, that we're working with them on the mapping. And if we think maps need to change through engineering, we're going to do, or because they're wrong, that we work with them and they get the maps changed so that people can be informed of how things are changing. So no, we can't just go in and dredge the creek. We can't do that. We would be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad to hear that we're all working with the county on this because like everything that came down here, like went through, or not everything, but a lot came through there. And it's kind of what Jason was talking about is if we potentially have to redesign everything to accommodate some sort of flow, there's going to be those choke points like you had mentioned, where I don't know that you can over engineer or engineer something where there just like isn't room for a period. And so potentially preventing some of the water from actually making it into those things, because there's a lot more undeveloped land south of us where water can kind of spill out into without doing damage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to hear that this is kind of like a big countywide thing. And kind of with that, I know I brought up that Cora had mentioned at our most recent MOP meeting that I think it was the Forest Service had lost funding to look after a couple of stream gauges up in the mountains, and would need some sort of supplemental funding to take care of it. I think like the Forest Service pays like 10 grand a year, and that was a very expensive way of doing it. So it wouldn't be that high of a cost to the city. But I know that those gauges are part of like what we use for our early warning system. So I don't know if Cora's brought that up in your conversations yet, or but I guess kind of more forward thinking.
Yeah. Well, we haven't had the big debrief yet. And I think everyone's just trying to address their own recovery spots still, but we will be getting together and having bigger discussions soon, so.
Any other questions? So I think it's important to realize too, that these storms, when they come, we never know where they're gonna hit.
Yeah.
And so we work on one area and then it hits up north and then it's, or down south, or, you know, you just never know. And you never know how anymore, we never know how strong they're gonna be. However, I think it's really good that we, you know, we've seen this a lot over the years. I mean, not to this intensity, but we always forget about it. You know, we have an event, it doesn't happen again for 5 years that in that intensity, and we kind of just push it aside. So I think it's really important for us to just keep moving this forward because, you know, the fact that we had 2 big events in 2 years, I don't think anybody was really expecting that. I know I wasn't. And so I think we need to just be prepared that this is probably what we're going to be seeing in the future.
Yep.
So thanks, Michael.
Can I
Or-
make one
yeah,
more comment
sure.
there? Could we be sure that we are publicizing and celebrating those small victories like the Parkway? Could we engage Lisa in some social media? Because I think that there's some really amazing things happening that you know, we really need to shed some light on.
Sure, I'll talk to Lisa in the morning about it.
Thank you.
That actually sparked a memory really quick. Do we have like any sort of centralized online place where residents can go and see what parts of the pathway are open and closed?
I don't believe we have that online. I will talk to Bree and David and Lisa about that to see if there's something we can do about that. Because there will be portions like between 100 West and 500 West that are going to be closed for a while.
Yeah.
And then that small I call it cantilever, but it makes it sound like we intended it to, yeah, so, yeah.
But Luke, those things could absolutely go hand in hand.
Thanks, Michael.
Yep, thank you.
All right. Moving on, section 4, consent agenda. 4.1, 4.2, approval of the minutes from June 25th, 2024, the city council regular meeting, and approval of the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $1,272,636.16. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Tawny, second,
Second.
second by Luke. Discussion, Tawny?
Nope.
Luke?
Nope.
Anybody else?
No.
Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And the only general business item is item 5.1, consideration of adoption of a resolution 17-2024, a resolution conditionally approving the Lawrence Minor subdivision of property located at 479 Bone Circle, Moab, Utah, 84532. This is another one of those kind of administrative items that you will not be seeing as soon as we pass our new subdivision ordinance. Correct? So I know you've seen them now, but by the end of the year, we probably won't be seeing these anymore. This particular property has come before the council on numerous occasions. And it seems as though, you know, something has come up for the applicant. So Corey's going to explain that to us, but there is a specific motion. If you decide to approve this, you need to really look at the recommendation that has presented to you by Corey.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a presentation prepared, but it's really not any additional information that's outside of your packet. So again, just to explain a bit of the background, is this particular property owner has continued to apply extensions, and then as that lapses out, is still intending to develop at some point, but of course, over the last 4 years, we'll call it, development hasn't been straightforward for just about anybody. So this property owner included, not wanting to, as what have always been conditions of this approval, remove one of the dwelling units that would be required in order to execute the subdivision, which is currently placed on where the property lines would be. So is not wanting to have that property owner, or excuse me, the tenant moved off property until it is absolutely imminent that he's going to develop. So that's the minutia to the conditions of that motion of the utility lines that are in that place and how that plat's being approved. But open to any questions or any further clarification.
Questions for Corey? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that Moab City Council approve resolution number 17-2024, resolution conditionally approving the Lawrence Minor subdivision of property located at 479 Bowen Circle, Moab, Utah 84532, with the following conditions. All comments shall be addressed to the satisfaction of the Moab City engineer and planning director prior to final recording. Comments include: A, the existing structure located on proposed lot 2 of Lawrence Minor subdivision must be removed or relocated in compliance with the property setbacks of proposed lot 2 prior to final recording. And B, all private utilities serving the existing structure located on proposed lot 2 shall be appropriately terminated or relocated within the appropriate lot boundaries or within a utility easement prior to the final recording. And C, outstanding comments shall be verified through city inspections and verification.
I can second that.
I meant,
It just rolled off.
Yeah, he did a good job. Okay, Corey, is that what you need?
That is perfect. Thank you.
All right, motion by Jason, second by Colin. The discussion, Jason.
nope, back at it again. This is like the third time I voted on it.
Right.
Colin.
Yes, more generally speaking, it'd be great. So all of these things that have been coming in front of us, all these developments, I'm really curious what state these are all in, you know, all these apartment complexes and these subdivisions. And, you know, we got a really good overview at our strategic planning. It would be great in some capacity to be brought up to speed on where all these stand and what's holding them up or what's moving them along, and just so that we can share that information with the public, because I think we're all really excited about all of these new units of housing coming online, and just really would like to know where they stand.
Definitely. I think if the council's interested in that, we certainly have some information, and some of it is more dynamic, but we could maybe set up a presentation piece or a department
I think
update
that'd be great.
in that regards. Happy to do that.
Okay, thanks, Corey.
Do you have any discussion on this particular item?
I do not, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Anybody else?
Okay, just to clarify, I thought that I understood, and then you said something, so just, is this an extension again, or?
No, this one will be
So-
a final plat approval.
Okay,
If
okay.
the owner is unable to accomplish that within the appropriate time, he may file for a one-year extension, which he has done in the past. But this is his first go round of the third go round.
Yeah, okay.
First go around to the third go around.
Any other discussion? All right, motion by Jason, second by Colin. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Corey. We'll
Thank
get
you,
that on
Council.
the list.
Thanks, Corey.
I will say that a lot of the developments that we haven't seen any action on, I think have to do with funding,
I'm sure.
you know,
yeah,
the interest rates.
yeah,
But we'll get that on the list, Corey, and we'll have an update sometime this fall.
that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, that's the end of our general business, and now we move on to David. How was the last
Nice
one?
to be with you. Yeah. I don't have a ton to report. There are still mosquitoes in Alaska, that is for sure. The only thing I was asked to reemphasize with, not necessarily with you, but with the public, is that we are in the open enrollment period for trash recycling service changes. So the time is now. Now's the time if you want to adjust your frequency and or bin size. We're taking care of that prior to the handover to the district here for the month of July. And I cannot remember if I did update you on this or not, but we, in working with Mike at the district, found a way to make it work so that we can still have the 65-gallon containers available for people to make that change for trash service. So while that was sort of eliminated as part of the interlocal, we found a way basically to bring it back. So I'm excited about that. It's nice, excellent. Yeah, thanks. And yeah, so that was good. I appreciated working with Mike on that. And otherwise, just digging out of emails. So if you're looking for a response from me on an email, it may be just a little while.
We've forgotten what we emailed you.
That is honest.
Thanks, David. All right, we'll move on to council reports and we'll start with Luke.
I'm in a similar boat as David where
That's what we
just
started.
catching up on emails. I only got back into town shortly after 9 p.m. last night, so yeah, still kind of catching my sea legs. But David's comment about the mosquitoes did make me think, did we ever talk about the written in comments that we received? Because I think we got some written in public comments. Didn't we?
Yeah.
Mosquitoes?
So there's like mosquitoes. I think there's one about the flooding situation, and I'm blanking on the third one right now. There's three though.
There's one about property tax.
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen those.
Oh, the other one was pro temps.
Property.
Well, that was a good one.
So sorry, Summer, where are they?
There's a Google form that you could use to submit comments to the council. There's a shared drive, go to that sheet that we have.
Yeah. Got it. So it's on the Google form for people to make comments at the council meeting before the council meeting. Okay.
I have not seen those.
Okay. With those, like, I get that they're public record because they got sent in. Should they still be kind of read as a part of the meeting, or because I've seen that kind of done in planning commission meetings and.
No, I don't think we would read them into part of the record. They will go into the record. So, but I think they deserve a response if they're asking a question.
Be like,
It was
Or like
initially set up as citizens to be heard.
Okay. Okay.
Things that has morphed into something different, and so there's not really a good way to tie them to a meeting or. So we need to have a conversation about what that looks like as far as those being entered as part of the record.
Right.
We weren't posting them on the website because they're not tied to a specific meeting, so we'll pop them there.
Right.
well, learn something new every day.
Well, we'll get back to you on that.
Right,
How's that
thanks.
sound? But the mosquitoes are a problem. So I don't know what the one said about mosquitoes, but they'll be gone.
Yeah.
They'll be gone at some point.
I think it's literally just 2 words: mosquito abatement.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't heard from them, but I'm sure they're out to work and I see them out working. So, anything else, Luke? Jason?
Pretty slow couple weeks for me. I didn't have any meetings. I had one that I missed. That was at work. But other than that, it's just, yeah, just, I was able to walk through town, a couple times. Colin and I spent an evening, just going from kind of hitting a couple different businesses and checking different places, after the floods, and speaking with people, which I thought was great. And, that's what I
Connie?
The only meeting I attended was a HASU meeting a couple of weeks ago. And it was pretty much just a general business meeting. And they had a closed session, so I left.
Okay, Colin?
Not much to report. We did have a volunteer, Tremix hosted a volunteer day on the Parkway in the Robin Groff Skills Park on July 1st. We had about 30 volunteers helping to clear out around the features and sweep off and scrape that area of the Parkway. And then I did have a Tremix meeting today where bulk of the time was again discussing e-bikes and where they fit into our both recreational and active transportation landscape. That is it.
Well, thank you to all the volunteers that came out. That was great.
Big thank you. Yeah.
It's huge. Caitlin.
I feel like I had a busy couple of weeks. So on the 26th, I did a ride along with Officer Bedont. And it was the night before the second big rainstorm. So we did some proactive work walking along the creeks, talking to some of the people that live out there, warning them to take cover, and some other proactive work. Had a few stops, learned a lot, really enjoyed it, and was just very impressed with the professionalism and kind of the level of respect that I saw from all the officers throughout the night. The next day, I went to the Horizon pre-screening hosted by the Moab Valley Film Commission. Highly encourage everyone to go see it. Thank you to BIGA. This project was a huge, economic driver. It was really exciting to see it as it was being produced, but also in person. Attended the free concert series. Super fun. I really love that the city supports that both as an entity, but also through the RAP tax. And then last week on the 2nd, I did my tour of the MRAC. I think I was a little bit later than the rest of the council on that, but learned a lot, echo a lot of the comments that council members made at our last meeting. City has a lot of work to do on that. And then throughout kind of the last week, did some volunteering, was in the 4th of July parade, attended the Grand County Fair. Want to give huge kudos to Grand County and the staff at OSTA. It was a huge event, and I know it was a lot of work. So I just want to give major kudos to them for putting on the fair. And then yesterday evening, I did an interview with the mayor on KZMU regarding the proposed property tax.
Great. Good work. So for me, I have a couple things. I met with Alexi regarding a letter of commitment that was presented to me from USU Extension on making Moab a healthy community. So that will be on your next agenda. And Alexi will be working with us on what that entails and also with the USU Extension Service. The day of the second flood, I was out at Lions Park with Rocky Mountain Power and UDOT to do a pseudo ribbon cutting on the new fast chargers out there. And then at that time, UDOT also offered their services to come and help with some of the flooding, which really made a huge difference. And that was from the governor's office. So that was really good. Was in the parade. That was a lot of fun. They threw out 8 pounds of candy. And as Caitlin mentioned, was on KZMU last night to talk about the property tax. And now I want to just go over with you the process. I know I've mentioned this a couple of times about the city manager, but I just thought it'd be good for the public to know and for you guys to be aware. We do have approximately 40 applicants, and we will do the initial review of all the applicants. That'll be Danny, David, and myself. So we'll review the spreadsheet from the recruiter's office, eliminate those candidates that are not qualified, and then coordinate a Zoom interviews with the qualified candidates. I work with Danny to come up with a real structured sort of ranking. I'm not really into ranking systems. I don't really want numbers to guide our decision, but I'm sure there's a process that HR is familiar with that we can work on. Once we narrow down the candidates for the Zoom interviews, we will interview qualified candidates. We hope through that process to narrow it down to 3 to 5. And if we need to, we'll probably coordinate another Zoom interview. And then if there's any real standout candidates, we'll move to the final candidate phase. If somebody just is like, this is it, so some more to come on that. At this point, that group will be Danny, David, Lisa, Lex, myself, and then 2 council members. I know Tawny, since she's been involved in this many times, has asked if she could be a part of that process.
You
And
asked me.
Oh. Well, I did ask you, but you said I would like to be a part of that process. So anyway, I would like Tawny to be a part of that. And then you know, I kind of have to, you know, I'll talk to all of you guys and think Colin would be a good one. Jason, maybe somebody, but we'll have to talk about that. And then once we get down to the final candidates, we will have in-person interviews with each of the final candidates. We'll utilize a objective process that includes professionalism, personality, rated questions. We'll provide a tour of the community. I'll have a lunch meeting with them, and then we'll coordinate, if needed, some optional local activities through the Moab Adventure Center. And then from there, we'll get the final candidate. So
And you said 40.
we have 40 so far.
Oh.
Yes, and I've looked at 10 candidates that really are qualified, and then I believe there's another 4 or 5. So anyway, my goal, my goal is to try to have a final candidate, or at least the final candidates, by September. I don't know if I'm going to meet that goal, but that's what I'd like to do because of timing. So I would like to be able to at least make it, you know, get into contract negotiations by the very latest, the end of September. So don't hold me to that. I'm going to try. That's just me. That's just me being really wanting to be aggressive on this because I don't want to get into the holidays. Once we get into the holidays, that's a whole different thing. So we'll see if we can get that done. So
David's refreshed.
yeah, yeah, I want to be refreshed. So I wanted to get this done before I go to get refreshed. Anyway, so that's
refreshed.
I've
been refreshed for 30 years.
Anyway, so I'll talk to you guys all about, you know, if anybody's really interested in being involved in the interview process, let me know. I just kind of picked people that I thought had been through this before, and Tawny particularly because I know she has, and she understands, you know, what kind of character we need in this position. So I really felt it was important for her to be involved all the way through the process, but I really am open to any of you guys that are interested. So any questions on that process? You guys good with that?
Yes.
All right. Way to go. We do not have a closed session. I always have this on there. You never know, something could come up. So, but we don't have anything to talk about this evening in closed session. So I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Motion by Tawny,
Second.
second by everybody.